Welcome to the Lost and Found podcast. I'm your host, Amanda. Join me each week as I rediscover my life's meaning, my passions, and my place in this world after leaving behind the only dream I've ever known. If you are dealing with self-loss, identity changes, career transitions, or you are still trying to figure out your life's purpose, then you're not alone. Join me. Wanderers are always welcome.
Creativity is everywhere and you tap into it. And I believe that. And I've got a saying that boredom is the mother of creativity. It's having that shovel willing to dig. But I think you also, just like I talked about with the shovel, you got to show up and you got to write a bunch of bad songs to get to that one magical song.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Lost and Found podcast. This is your host, Amanda. I am so excited to be here. Today I am in Nashville, Tennessee at On the Avenue with my good friend, Tom Woodard. We're going to talk all about redemption, recovery, and resilience today as I pick his brain about his career throughout, being a songwriter, being a business owner, father, and now content creator and future author. And I'm so excited to have him here. We're going to have a great time and it's going to be a good show and can't wait for you to listen. Enjoy. Hi, Tom. Welcome to the Lost and Found.
Hello, Amanda.
I'm so excited to have you here.
So glad to be here.
How have you been?
I've been really good. It's been a while since I've seen you.
I know. We have a lot to catch up on.
Well, good. This is a great way to catch up.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm excited. Tell everybody a little bit about where we are right now. This is your new business that you've been working on for a while.
Yeah.
Tell us about On the Avenue.
So we're located today on the Avenue, and On the Avenue is a place, it's kind of a maker studio where people with and without disability can come together and create things. And it's awesome. We found that creativity really builds confidence and community in all of us. Yeah. And so we explore creativity here every day.
Love that. I'm so excited. And it's a privilege and an honor to be participating with your team here today. Absolutely. So this is so cool.
Excited.
Well, Tom, the show talks a lot about people who are feeling lost or like they're trying to find their right path and their purpose in life. And that's what happened to me a few years ago. And so I've been interviewing people, from all over to try and learn about their what now moments and their stories. So if you don't mind sharing with our listeners, can you take us back to a moment in your life where you felt lost in your either career or your identity and what helped you find clarity again?
I think the thing that has always been redemptive for me has been my faith walk. I became a Christian at 13 years old and have always come back to that. Wandered way off the path many, many times, but always have that to come back to. And in the advertising game, that was just such a crapshoot. I started writing songs when I was 8 years old and always wanted to do that and have written a bunch of songs and had a few small cuts. But I met a guy named Pat Patrick one Friday night, and Pat was at a party and he said, I do these little 30-second songs and they're called jingles and we sell them to clients all over the world. And he had just gotten through doing a big one for Holiday Inn. And he goes, you ought to come to work for me sometime. Well, I was working at a little department store here in Nashville and I walked in and quit Saturday morning and I showed up at his doorstep Monday and said, I'm here. And he goes, did I hire you? And I was like, yeah, you did on Friday night. You told me to come to work for you one time. I didn't mean Monday. And I was like, well, I'm here.
Well, I'm here now, yeah.
Yeah, and he goes, hey, if you can sell something, you can write it. And so that was the moment that I sort of realized that there was a world of creativity that I'd been doing with my songs forever that can meet up with commerce. And maybe there was a way to make a living in the world of creativity. And so I got in the jingle business. And a few weeks after calling everybody I knew to say, hey, you want to buy a jingle? No, thanks, Tom. I called a little place called Brunel College here in Nashville, and they needed a jingle. They had a $10,000 budget. We produced a song called Make a Move for Tomorrow, and they played it for their 30 campuses around the country, and I was off and running. And it was a lot of fun, and that took me through a long career. Ended up working for your dad back in the day, a big agency here in Nashville. We grew that tremendously from 30 employees to some 300 employees at one time, which I think drove your dad crazy. I think he asked him to build an agency, and I think he didn't know what we were building at the time, as we didn't.
I don't know that he did either. Yeah. His favorite thing was to say, like, you sometimes as a business owner, you build the plane while you're flying it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your dad has a favorite story and kind of a favorite
he does.
A piece of my career that he likes to talk about. And I was blessed enough to answer the phone one day, and the phone rang as it did. I was in sales and of music, and one of my buddies, Michael Smith, said, "Hey, Tom, can you make a frog say Budweiser?" And I said, why don't we do 3 and put them on loop? He goes, great idea. So his writer wrote this little script of Bud, Wise, and and sent it to us. We cut the audio track. I lived on a farm out west of Nashville. Had a 3-acre pond. I knew what cricket sounded like. I knew what frog sounded like. And we just laid over the words Budweiser. And that became the first Budweiser spot in 1995. But it wasn't without its circuitous route to that first Super Bowl airing. And I remember getting a phone call. The agency was Darcy Macias, Benton and Bowles up in St. Louis. And the producer that was working for Dave Swain and Michael Smith called me and said, hey man, I appreciate the demo. We're going to LA and produce the audio. And I was like, oh man, let us produce it at least. And he said, okay, I'll let you produce it, but we're gonna go get the real voices out of Los Angeles. And so he sent me a DAT tape, the old DAT tapes, or just sent me a recording of 35 different people auditioning for each syllable.
Oh, wow.
I know, it was nuts. And we had to pour through it. And I picked a guy named Brad Garrett, who was a little fame of Everybody Loves Raymond, and he was a stand-up comedian at the time. Really funny guy, big, deep voice. A guy that had been on many commercials and cartoons named Roger Bumpus, and then one of the guys from Roger Rabbit. I picked those 3.
I love all these names.
I know, right? And so it was awesome. And so they flew me to LA to produce this at a cool spot called Sound Waves. As I left the session, I asked the engineer, I said, hey, would you mind putting our demo up front before you put all the other takes that we had gotten that day? He said, no, I'll do that, it's cool. So I flew back to Nashville a few days later. It was a call from a guy named Chan Hatcher, who was the producer on the spot for Darcy. And he said, Tom, we did not capture the magic out in LA. And I'm like, what? This is not good. He goes, so we've decided to use the demo with your voices on it. Are you okay with that? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And at this time, we didn't know it was going to be a big deal.
Right.
We just thought it was going to be another Budweiser spot, which is a big deal. So the redemptive moment in that little place was where I told the guy to put our demo on the front. And sometimes you create your own redemption. And something happened that it was going one way and it came back to me that way. But it was the willingness to say, do that, please leave that on the tape for the producers to listen to. It turned out though, Amanda, that this was the last spot that Darcy did for Budweiser. They forfeited the account to DDB Needham in Chicago. And I was like, we're losing this control over being the voices or producing the audio or whatever. So I immediately got on a plane and I went to Chicago and met with some guys I knew at Needham. And I said, man, we'd like to stay a part of this. And he goes, okay, you can be the voices. That's cool. And so we were the voices in all the spots. Through the lizards and the ferrets and all the crazy things that tried to kill us in Swamp. But that redemptive moment was something that I actually went out and made happen a little bit by not giving up on it, not just going, oh, sure, take it to Chicago. Y'all will figure it out up there. You got to go show up. And in my faith walk, it's like a lot of people want God to help them and do things, but you got to bring a shovel to that. And you got to show up and you got to dig.
I like that.
And then you've got to let God take it from there. And so it has been sort of that little window on the frog spot and how we got that to be a part of it during the entire life of it is sort of how I believe in life. You got to show up and then good things can happen.
What would be your favorite character or song that you ever created or got to play?
Wow, that's great. Great question.
Been a songwriter, again, like you said, since you were 8. So it could be something you made when you were 8 throughout your career.
My 2 favorite characters, my wife's getting ready to laugh at this because I told this story on a recent trip and she goes, really, again? So I'll tell this story. But I would say my favorite song is a song called Meet Mr. Lucky. And it's just called Mr. Lucky. And Chuck Cannon, a great songwriter here in Nashville, he's written a ton of hits. And I asked him about how do you write a great song? And he said, practice, just write songs. And he said, sometimes you just got to set something down and write a song about it. So lay your shoe down and it's got a soul and it's got laces and it's been many miles. And so there are all these things. It's not just an inert shoe. It has all these stories around it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And I had a picture of my grandfather, who I never got to meet. He passed away when my dad was 7. And so I put the picture of my grandfather down and he was there with a bolo and an umbrella standing by a train stand and he just looked like Mr. Lucky. And so I said, I'm going to write this fictitious story about stories that I don't know anything about my grandfather. And he died at 35 years old. So the first line of the song is he died at 35 and he didn't miss a thing. And so that was how I started this song, and then backwards went to his birth. And I knew a few factual things about him and wove those through there. But so that was probably my favorite song I've ever written. My favorite character I ever played, my sophomore year in high school, I got to play Fagin and Oliver. And,
fun.
And then went back 20 years later with a reunion cast and played it again with my daughter being one of the little henchmen. And I loved playing Fagin. I could be on Broadway every night playing Fagin. I love that role. I think it's a great play, and I really enjoy my time doing that. So playing Fagin and writing Meet Mr. Lucky, I would say, are two of my favorite things I've kind of randomly done.
Yeah, well, I like that because it spans all of your time, and it's not also only about yourself. It's about how did you connect to other people, and how did those characters connect to other characters in the project you were doing. So I like that. Tell me a little bit, though, about you've had all this experience in ads and sales and songwriting and now nonprofits and various businesses. You're an entrepreneur and your own writer, content creator. But in all of your experience with working with creatives, what do you think separates a creative that is thriving versus a creative that's just surviving under pressure?
Somebody asked me one time, how do you write a song? How do you become a songwriter? And I said, write a song. And so I think I've had friends who had to wait for the lightning strike to hit them. And then I've had other guys that were buddies of mine that showed up at 9, left at 5, and it was their job. And so I think that the successful guys show up as a job. It doesn't mean that the stories about Alan Jackson having remember when, come to him in a dream and waking up and writing. Those things happen. They really do. And Rick Rubin has a great new book on creativity, the producer who created Def Jam and all that. He talks about creativity is everywhere and you tap into it. And I believe that. But I think you also, just like I talked about with the shovel, you got to show up and you got to write a bunch of bad songs to get to that one magical song. So I think it's practicing and using a lot of technique and just showing up, working that. You got to hit a lot of golf balls to be a good golfer. I think it does hit you sometimes. And now with new digital tools, I do a lot of voice recordings. I do a lot of audio recording just driving down the road when something hits you, because it does just hit you sometimes. And so I think it's different for everybody. But again, I think it's having that shovel, willing to dig. I'm a big collaborative guy. I think Nashville is a wonderful creative collaboration city. I'm a better collaborative songwriter than I am a solo songwriter. And I think one of the things we do here at On the Avenue is we work together, we create together. And I think it makes things better. I mean, you and I are here doing a podcast. We're just me talking, which is I'm doing a lot of, but you're helping me weave my way through stories.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed, when I was younger, I've talked about it on the show. My mom came over once to drop off a bunch of stuff because they had sold their house and they had all these things in storage. And one of them was all of my brothers and I's like artwork or missing teeth from when we were children, like that kind of like old stuff. And so she gave it all to me because she was like, either I'm tossing it or it's you take it kind of a thing. And so I wanted to take it just to kind of sift through and what do you keep, take, donate kind of thing. And there was a bucket full of just my journals from when I was a little girl and like all my old diaries, even from when I'm like 4 or 5 years old, and I'm just drawing and coming up with all these characters and storylines. And I had like a movie script in there, and I wrote like a book. This is not kosher anymore, but I had a crush on Mel Gibson when Braveheart came out. And so I wrote a book about me being Mel Gibson's girlfriend. And I know that's it's whatever now, but anyway, in that fantasy land, I wrote a whole storyline of what that would be like and just all these different creative things. And I realized that as I got older, I let her go. You know, I stopped feeding that part of myself. And it turns out that like being creative, whether it's music, songwriting, being an actual artist, being a chef, or just doing something with your hands where you're enabling your brain and your body to like let go of whatever's inside of you to just come up with art, your own imagination. Tapping into that is still so crucial to understanding yourself and the world around you and trying to relate to other people. And so building this podcast has actually helped me connect to that again, I think. And it's helped me heal from all kinds of things. Yeah. And so that's kind of why I really like interviewing people. It's just to, one, selfishly, because I like this process and it helps me feel better, but I think it helps other people too. So sharing your own story, sharing what you've recovered from, or what you've been through and what's helped you become so resilient, it's a good reminder to not only reconnect to who you are, but to remind yourself you've done it before, you can do it again. Yes. And whatever you've been through hasn't killed you yet. So whatever's coming next, you got this. Yeah.
Got a lot of those stories, and you and I have shared some of those along the way. One thing that's really important to me is that creativity, God created the heavens and the earth and he made man. So creative is from nothing. You create out of the ethos and it just comes and you create it on a blank canvas. You make things from things. So you take 5 or 6 things and create something from those, but it's you're making something at that point. And I think that's important because it's literally bringing something that doesn't exist and bringing life into it. And I love that. I love that. I've always been a builder like that.
How do you feel about the industry nowadays? Because I know when you first started, right, there wasn't that much technology. You're talking about the D tracks and things like that, or just people may not even remember like floppy disks and things like that. Computers have changed, cameras have changed, film has changed, our attention spans have changed. But one key thing I've noticed in your stories is that you created from a place of authenticity, and those were the moments that went viral for you or were the most successful. How do you think it's going now, though, with the way that the direction the industry is going in? Do you think people are missing how to be authentic because they're chasing fame too much? Or can you stay motivated in a life like this anymore? Or is a robot going to take your job?
Yeah, these are great questions. I'll answer it this way. I think creativity is as alive and well as it's ever been. I think new tools are being created that you need to use. And I think those tools used correctly add to creativity and become a huge part of creativity. Used incorrectly, they can be very evil. I mean, whether it's social media or AI or whatever it is. But I think the intention is for those to take some of the methodical things, parts of creativity, and shorten that. So research, different things that can happen. I'm not a big template-based fan. Hey, let's just find this, pop it in, and cookie cutter it. I like to kind of create and then find things and bring them together. So I don't think it's killed creativity. And I think that I still love the process of it. Can you tell a computer to write you a song that has love and blue skies and, green shirts and da-da-da-da-da-da, and that becomes the song? Yes, you can do that. But then you don't struggle with first verse, second verse, playing what works well and playing the puzzle pieces. I've got a saying that boredom is the mother of creativity. And I absolutely believe that. I taught myself to play guitar because I was sitting in my room bored. My dad had a guitar in the other room, so I grabbed it. I sat in there and I sucked for a year. And I still kind of stink at it, but I love it. And I taught myself to play. So the boredom forced me into creativity. I think a lot of people these days don't allow themselves to be bored. And I think we need to put our phones down and think. Unfortunately, the tools and the invention of internet and the searchability and the phone in the pocket and the whole bit has taken some of that away. I think it can still exist. We just spent 2 weeks on vacation and I didn't watch TV the whole time. It was amazing. Amazing. And I saw amazing things, and I saw little things that I would have walked right past. And so I think we have to allow for quiet and boredom in our lives in order to be able to tap into that creativity.
Yeah, I like that you're not getting rid of your inspiration because it's already all around you. And taking advantage of being bored, because that happens. You can't avoid it. Every now and then you'll have a lull. Like, what can you do with the lull? You don't have to use it as like oh man, I'm stuck here in this moment. And it's like, okay, great, you are stuck, but what can you do with it? How can you use it or repurpose it in some way? Yeah.
You can fill it with having input, and there's plenty out there, or you can fill it with thought. And we've been given this beautiful brain that we now use 5% of, or something silly that I hear scientists say. And I think we're just dumbing ourselves down by just becoming consumers as opposed to being creators.
Or critical thinkers, yeah. On the opposite side of that coin, What do you do when you have writer's block or you have a deadline and your team has to come up with a concept or an idea, but you guys are just kind of nothing's coming out good that you like? What do you do as a creator to get over your writer's block kind of moments?
That's a great question. I think you immerse yourself in it. If you want to write about nature, you can't do it in a concrete city. Go do it in the middle of nature. So I would say to break writer's block, go immerse yourself in what you're trying to write about. If you're trying to write about your family or figure out something about your family, go read a bunch of genealogy about them and find anecdotal stories about them. Research can be a big part of that. So I like throwing something on the board and trying to beat it. And if you don't beat it, maybe there's a reason it can't be beaten. And I think so many times we talk through creativity as opposed to listening for creativity. And I think when we get quiet, you can start to hear things and see things that you don't when you're so busy trying to get it done. So go take a walk. I'm a big walker these days.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, that's a good segue. You've been walking a lot lately. Walks with Woodard, right?
Well, walk with Uncle Woody. I know it sounds like a white guy in a van running around a little, but my wife gave me that moniker in Instagram.
Tell us a little bit about him.
Oh gosh, walk with Uncle Woody is it's over 4 years now. I've been walking at least a mile a day, and I haven't missed a day. Again, it was back to that shovel. One of my mentors, I was stuck in business and not knowing what to do and where to go, and he said, just show up every day. Just show up every day. So I just started walking, and I walk at least a mile a day. Sometimes it's 4 or 5, but at least a mile a day, every day between midnight and midnight. And about almost a year ago now, my wife said, why don't you post these on Instagram? And I had been videotaping them every day. So I've got over 1,478, I think is day today, videos of me walking. And I had an accountability group that I was sharing them with. And then I just started posting them on Instagram. And my son said, why don't you share a Bible verse every day? And so instead of just communicating with my, hey guys, it's a pretty day, it's what we're doing, I share a Bible verse every day. So I get to spread the good news, get a little exercise in, keep my daily walk going, and it's kind of catching on social media, and I had no idea. So walk with Uncle Woody. You can follow me on the gram and catch a little bit of the good news every day. So yeah, we pick a different Bible verse every day and share it. I did it this morning, John 14:15. So
yeah, what was today's lesson?
Today's verse was Jesus talking, saying, I offer you peace, not as the world offers you peace. As I've come and doing what my Father said to do, I ask you to go and do the same thing. And so I think Jesus was an amazing teacher. And so I try to listen to what he had to say. 50% of the time I'm applying that to my life, trying to get it more to 100, but it's not a bad day. That was the lesson. He brings us peace. He came and was sent by his Father, and he sends us into the world to love each other as he loved us. So that was the message today from Uncle Woody.
I love that. What has the process of creating and sharing the walks taught you about yourself? What have you learned from the beginning of sharing Uncle Woody to today?
Yeah, I think, I went through a part of my life, we've talked about this, my first life after the frogs and during that period where I got really selfish. It all became about me. We went around and I talked at different ad clubs and I was on different TV shows as a frog, and I think my head started filling up a little bit. And I started doing it for the wrong reasons. And my faith tells me God first, others second, myself third, and I kind of put myself at the top of the list. And that has consequence. And it did in my life, from some selfish things I was up to, from not being a great husband and father, to not being a great guy, not staying in shape, not focusing on faith, not loving others like Jesus loved us. I went down a selfish path for many, many years. Struggle and self-imposed struggle or worldly struggle is what builds our character. And so I think I had to go through all those things to realize that I wanted to be different. I wanted to serve God by serving others. And then that's where my true joy comes from. My feet hit the ground every morning. I thank God for that day that's to come. And I pray that I can be a light in this world. And I fall short again every day. But if I seek that every day, that is kind of what righteousness is trying to seek to be like God, never reaching it, but seeking that. And I think that's what we forget when we get knocked down. And I think that's what we forget when we get in those dark moments. Well, we here at On the Avenue love, like I said, working together. And I love the camaraderie we've built here with friends and families and giving people opportunity. I would say that my biggest knockdown time has been the selfish time I've had to overcome.
Yeah, I know you mentioned just now that you can't go back and fix the past, of course, and we all know that. And everybody has hindsight being 20/20, and you're like, that's the lesson I should have learned in that moment. Well, Genie gives you one chance to go back in time to fix one moment where you could redeem yourself or change a situation that you wish you had not done it that way. Is there a moment that you would pick to go back and fix or change, and why?
God, I've thought about that a lot, Amanda. I mean, as you reflect on your life as you get older, you start to think about those days you would change. They're usually instance. Life has changed not over the course. Sometimes it's changed over the course of time, but usually it's changed by something, an action with a reaction. I don't know that there's one moment I would change. There's a series of things I would do, and that would be that selfish person that I became that thought of others and really didn't care what other people thought about me. Would I change one thing?
Because I have a lot. There's lots of moments where I'm like, I should not go on that date, or I should have not accepted that job, or I should have done all these kinds of things. But I know that deep down, if I hadn't failed or fallen or gotten off my path, I don't think I would have become the person I am today. I was just curious if there was a moment in your life where you're like, I wish Tom had done X instead of Y.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a lot of those things that I made bad decisions when I was in that selfish mode. No question. I went through some addictions. I did some things I know I shouldn't have done that affected other people around me. Got divorced, but I wouldn't change that because the redemptive moment in that, I'll give you a cool other side of that coin so that we can go back and talk about that moment. My first wife and I have two beautiful children. They're older, my oldest daughter, both went to Ole Miss, and Kate and Alex, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. So to say that wasn't a bad thing. And then if I hadn't got divorced and hadn't gone through some of the selfish things I did then, I wouldn't be married to my current wife now, I wouldn't have my son. And so I think of that in a whole, and now the redemptive moment is we all go to the same church. My ex-wife, her husband, our two daughters, my son-in-law, the grandkids, my son, my wife, we all sit in church together, and it's taken a lot of forgiveness, God's grace, timing, conversation, willingness to forgive and forget. There's some things during those selfish times, I could go into some stories about them. Yeah, just things you do, whether you've had too much to drink one night and you do something stupid, or you're not thinking clearly because you're so wound up in yourself. I think being real and keeping humble and trying to not make it about yourself. If I could change one thing in a general sense, I would not have put myself first in those moments that I did.
Yeah.
Because those moments were fleeting and they're gone and they caused great chaos in my.
Yeah, the ripple that they had you couldn't see it then, but it affected a lot of other things.
We have to realize that in life is that things we do, everything we do has a cause and effect. And sometimes they're very unintentional. How do you get beyond those? You just continue to forgive and move forward and always keep your eyes looking forward. I think when we start to look in the rearview mirror too much and live in that rearview mirror, that's when we can get depressed and get real lost. And I think you've got to get your head up and realize there's another day tomorrow. The best time to plant a tree in the world is 50 years ago. The next best time to plant a tree is right now. And so you can't go back and replant it 50 years ago. So the next best time to plant that tree is today, right this moment.
Yeah. You've talked a lot about grace a bit, and you've given grace you've named people in your life that have helped you and shown that to you. How have you learned to give yourself grace, though? Because when you make a lot of mistakes or you're going through a rough time in your life, for any listener that might be feeling that way or feeling lost, and I did this for a minute too when I left my career. I blamed myself. I was so disappointed in myself that why couldn't I get to this thing? Why couldn't I follow through on what I told everybody else I was going to follow through on, right? And learning to give yourself just the relief of it's not your fault that this didn't work out, or just because it didn't pan out the way you wanted it to pan out doesn't mean it was a mistake or anything like that. But how have you done it when you've been going through all these different moments? How have you learned to forgive yourself? Because I've struggled with that a lot throughout my life for different reasons at different times, but forgiving myself for a mistake that I made is hard.
I would say that, again, I come back to my faith. I learned that through New Testament, just giving myself grace, that's what we're supposed to do, number one. But knowing what you're supposed to do and doing it are two massively different things. And I think surrounding yourself and preparing yourself for those moments and just continuing to move forward is a big one. And knowing that I'm not supposed to be perfect. I'm not supposed to walk around here and walk on water and turn things into wine. And I'm just supposed to be a dude, doing what I do on earth. And so I think learning to forgive yourself for something, maybe not forget it because you want to learn from it. And, I have that quilt analogy that we're this big quilt around you and you're continually building your quilt. And sometimes you look at a section of your quilt and you go, oh, that's a really fond memory. Sometimes you look at that quilt and you go, ooh, that was a tough one. And just realizing that I'm not supposed to be perfect. I am going to make mistakes. The only true mistake is living in that mistake and not getting beyond it. And so I think you have to find ways. I choose to go do something for others. if you're wallowing in your own stuff, it's always a good thing to go do something that day for someone else. Whether it's helping somebody move, or just going and sitting with somebody that's older that's alone, or smiling at a guy that's selling a contributor on the streets or a newspaper. Go do something for someone else, and it takes you out of that position of wallowing in yourself. And so I think that's an important thing to do in order to give yourself grace.
Well, Tom, this has been so much fun chatting with you. I've had a great time.
You do this for days.
I know, yeah. I'm sure your team wants to go home.
Yeah, our favorite beverage, and we could do this all the rest of the day. Yeah, exactly.
No, well, I've had a good time. I have 5 final core questions that I always ask all my guests. Don't think about it, just tell me your first thoughts.
Okay, cool.
Kind of thing. All right.
Try that.
So what do you want out of life, and have you found what you're looking for?
Yeah, I have. It's peace, and it's an okayness of what you were talking about earlier. Just I have found it. It's peace, and I find that in my Creator, and it's realizing that today I'm enough, tomorrow I'm enough, yesterday I was enough, and I think that harkens back to your grace question. So yeah, I wouldn't change where I am right now for anything.
Love that. What would you say has been your greatest achievement?
Oh wow. My family. I would have to put my family as my greatest achievement. I have 3 amazing children, 2 beautiful grandkids, an amazing wife, and as I alluded to earlier, an amazing ex-wife. And we all kind of live life together. We're celebrating my youngest daughter's 31st birthday coming up, and we're all going to do that together. So I think just the ability to have that family around me is family and friends. I would add friends to that. I've been very blessed over my life to have a lot of deep relationships, and I've got a lot of really good friends. So I would say that's my biggest accomplishment.
Good. I'm glad you have a community that supports you. It's like that's sometimes when you can't get through it alone, you have to lean on others. So that's good that you have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think it's so true though. If you're lost, go find someone to be with, and they'll help you find yourself better. If you don't have that compass, go find someone, and 2 or 3 minds, like collaboratively creative, like we talked about earlier. I think that's important, having that group of people, your tribe around you.
Mm-hmm. How do you define purpose, and what does living in your purpose look like to you?
Wow, that's changed over my course of my life for on so many levels. Purpose, success, achievement, all that stuff was so just driven and for earthly success early on in my life. David Brooks, great writer, has a book called Second Mountain, and we build our first mountain for ourselves and our second mountain for others. And then I realized my purpose is really simply to spread the teachings of my Savior. That's my purpose on the planet. I did that. I just didn't realize that was my sole purpose. And there's so much joy and so much life that comes with that. It allows me to open up and have candid conversations with others like we're doing today. It allows me to have private conversations. It allows me to listen. It allows me to sit in things with people. I know when I went through my divorce, I've been able to share that experience and the ultimate redemption with so many people, and let them know there is hope and joy after a traumatic experience like that. So I think that it's finding purpose in life. My purpose has been to share the good news of my Creator.
Yeah. When you have felt off the path or out of alignment with that purpose, what are some maybe rituals or things that you do to bring yourself back to center and refocused on the right path?
And no doubt, no matter what your religious beliefs are, or your faith walk is, spending quiet time is one that's really, really important with yourself. I think we're so influenced by so many things today on the planet that you need to slow down and realize you need to simplify. We just got back from a vacation where we went to a 2,500 person village up in Vancouver Island, and things were so simple and it wasn't complicated. And so I think sometimes you have to just pause, listen, and spend time in quiet meditation. Walking, like we talked about, that's a big one for me. But those give me the ability to get out of that moment I'm in, and then sharing with others, being willing to be vulnerable. And I think men have a real problem with that. All people do, but I think men especially have a real problem with being vulnerable and sharing things that they feel like people might judge them for or might think less of them for. So I think being vulnerable, quiet, spending time, mine is spending time in the Bible or wherever it is that centers you, and meditation is a great one. So those would be my rituals in that.
You're surrounded by so much noise all the time. Everybody's competing for everybody else's attention, but if you're not connecting to yourself, you have to get rid of everything else that's standing in that way. And sometimes you're right. The going back into isolation to reflect is helpful.
Yeah. And I think turn into others too. I've been going down a path over the last few years where I start to write down my absolutes. What do I believe? What do I think? What do I doubt? But what are my absolutes? What am I going to live my life based on that I believe is just 100% true? And make a list of those, and then keep coming back to those. Journaling is a great way to do that, but just spending time with yourself. I think sometimes you can spend too much time with yourself and you get lost in your own thought, and you got to get out of your head and get into interaction. So I think surrounding yourself with others and spending in quiet time, a good balance of both is important to do when you're lost. Get your map back out.
Yes.
Whatever your map is.
Mm-hmm. Whatever that looks like for you. Yeah. So I usually ask the guests, if you could talk to yourself 10 years ago, what advice would you give yourself? But I'd like to twist yours actually just a little bit.
Okay.
You've talked a lot about how important family is to you, and the relationship that you have with your children now has been the best that it's ever been. So if your children were to listen to this podcast or watch this video, what's the lesson that you would hope they would take away from today's conversation? If you could speak to them, what would you want them to know?
Enjoy the ride. The secret of life, James Taylor says, is enjoying the passing of time. And it is. Life is finite. You get to be my age and you start to go to a lot of funerals. And it becomes very finite, the time we have on earth. And I would say, enjoy the passing of time, spend more time doing things for others, and make sure and enjoy the ride, as they say. It's so fleeting. I can't, when I look in the mirror, I'm like, who is that? You know, I still feel 25. And obviously not. And so it's yeah. And you're enough. You don't have to go be something you're not. Just you're enough. God made you in his image. That's enough.
All right. And our final question, for anybody that might be feeling lost or stuck in their life right now and they're not really sure how to move forward again or how to get unstuck in their current situation, what advice would you give a person like that?
There's the general who tells you to get up and make your bed up. I think you just get them to do something. Go do something, because don't wallow in it. I've used that word before, but minutes can turn to hours, can turn to days, can turn to weeks, months, years, that you just wallow in this and you can't get out of it. You got to get up and shift yourself out of it. It's kind of like throwing cold water on your face. You got to get up and take that step, whatever that step is, and do something uncomfortable. Forgive yourself. We talked about grace. Forgive yourself for getting in that position, and realize maybe sometimes you didn't get yourself in that position. I think it's somebody's health that just happened to them. They didn't do that. So I would say you have to be mobile, be active, go do something, don't sit in it. There have been times in my life where I have just sat in it, and I felt sorry for myself, and I just felt like, and that's when you start to feel like there's no hope. Go find your hope. And I think that by physically going and doing something, convening with someone else, hearing their point of view of you and them and that relationship, and seeing other things, just gets you out of that being stuck in the mud. And we've all been there. And then you start to realize, wow, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in my sadness. I'm not alone in my place or my bad spot. Everyone's been through it. We just had a failed business over the last 5-6 years. And it's so refreshing to go talk to other business owners and other entrepreneurs and go, oh, well, welcome to the world. That's what it's about. And then you don't feel alone. And I think when you're lost and alone, that gets desperate. You can be lost as long as you're not alone. Don't let that happen. That would be my advice.
I love that. Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you and getting to learn more about you and hearing your stories and your open and raw honesty. I think everybody listening is going to really appreciate that. So let everybody know how to find you, or if they want to interact with any of your projects you got going on right now, or they want to come see On the Avenue. How do we do that?
Cool. Well, first off, thanks for having me on the show, and congrats on your podcast, and much success in the future with this and in the present. I'm honored to be on it. On the Avenue, you can visit us at ontheavenue.net, and it'll take you a lot of different places you need to go. To see our content, you can visit our youtube.com/ontheavenue. And there's some great stuff there. I always like to say, get your favorite beverage and sit down, and you'll be sucked in for hours, as we talked about that. And then you can follow me on Instagram at Walk with Uncle Woody. If you want to get a good news Bible verse of the day, it's a good way to get that. So those are the ways to do it. And would love for you to anybody to come by and visit the studio here in Nashville if you're in town.
Yeah, Awesome. Well, hopefully we can record again together sometime, or
You're welcome.
bring another guest here someday.
You come by, the studio is always open for you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. All right, everybody. That's the end of our show for this week. You know how to find me. Hello at podcastforthelost.com. I will make sure to put all of Tom's information into the show notes. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, where we're everywhere you can download your podcasts. Everything's under Podcast for the Lost. And remember, wanderers are always welcome.